What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot to talk about today in terms of these areas of interest that are continuing to show more and more development odds, as well as signs of organization for the one near the Cabo Verde Islands. We also are going to do a quick peek at Hurricane Isaac, as well as Tropical Storm Joyce, as well as the potential threat that those two areas of interest pose. Particularly the one in the Caribbean Sea is the one I am paying the most attention to, because based on some things I'm looking at, this looks like it could strike similar areas to where Helene just made landfall and cause catastrophic flooding to a lot of these areas, especially in the Carolinas. We've seen a lot of damage go on over there. We've seen a lot of homes and towns get wiped out and completely engulfed in floodwaters. My heart, thoughts, and prayers at first go out to everyone that has been affected, and we need to do everything we can to get these livelihoods back and recover as quick as we can. So with that being said, let's go ahead and dive right into it. So here's what we have going on. We have two areas of interest right here. We have Hurricane Isaac, which is now a Category 2 hurricane. There was some evidence earlier that this was a Cat 3. However, we're going to have to wait for the postseason analysis to determine how that happens or not. So we'll have to pay attention to it. But regardless, here's the situation that we have right now. It's a Category 2 hurricane, pressure of 968 millibars. Its hurricane force winds extend outward 45 miles from the center, and tropical storm force winds extend outward 195 miles from the center. You also have the discussion that we're going to go ahead and pull up over here right about now. So let's go ahead and do that. Isaac's strengthening trend from the past day or so has appeared to have leveled off. Isaac still has a clear eye with relatively symmetric appearance, although some dry air entrainment is evident coming in from the southwest. Intensity estimates range from 77 to 93 knots, and initial intensity has been held at 90 knots and agree with the TAFB's Dvorak classification of 5.0. The wind radii has been modified to reflect the values of the ASCAT pass that happened. Isaac is already over relatively cool water and will reach progressively lower SSTs in the coming day or two, all the while encountering increasingly hostile shear. Thus, Isaac's intensity has most likely peaked, and gradual weakening today is forecast to accelerate through the weekend. This weakening will coincide with a extratropical transition, which, based on global models, I'm really butchering this today, folks, will complete in about 48 hours. The NHC intensity forecast remains unchanged from the previous forecast and is in close agreement with the consensus and forecast aids. So ultimately, we're looking at low-end Cat 2 in the next 12 hours, getting down below hurricane strength in the next 48 hours, while this becomes a post-tropical cyclone as this moves into the northern Atlantic and potentially poses a threat to the United Kingdom and Iceland. So if you're in those areas, you're going to want to pay attention to that as this extratropical cyclone heads your area. Here is the cone that we have pulled up: extratropical transition in the next 48 hours, and then moving out, and then ultimately we'll have to see what goes from there. But Isaac is coming to an end. It has peaked in intensity, and now it's going to be entering an extratropical cyclone transition, and that will pretty much be the last we hear of that. At least for this year, the I curse is not there, as it was Helene instead of Isaac that made landfall in Florida. It's usually the I-named storms that typically do that. This year, it was the H-named storm. So I just thought I'd bring that up, and that was pretty interesting. Also paying attention to Tropical Storm Joyce as well. Joyce is going to be on a weakening trend pretty soon. Let's go ahead and pull up the public advisory so far. Tropical storm force winds extend outward 105 miles from the center. Pressure is 1,004 millibars. Maximum sustained winds are near 50 miles per hour. Little change in strength is expected today. Weakening is forecast to begin. So ultimately, that's what we're paying attention to. Expected to get down to a post-tropical cyclone or remnant low in the next 72 hours as it gets below tropical storm status. So ultimately, Joyce is becoming less and less of a threat as of late in terms of shipping concerns and all that. Same with Isaac. However, we now have two areas of interest that we need to pay attention to, especially the one in the Caribbean Sea, as this does pose the greatest threat, like I said earlier, to tens of millions of people once again. Here's what we got going on. We now have a 50% probability of development, has gone up a little bit. I can tell you at the NHC and if you read behind the in between the lines, they're pretty confident that this will develop. We have a lot of operational runs that are calling for this system to develop, a lot of ensemble runs calling for this system to develop, and I'm sure the NHC's models, the models we do not have access to in the public, are screaming that this system is going to develop. So let's go ahead and pay attention to this right here. In the Western Caribbean Sea, an area of low pressure is expected to form over the Western Caribbean Sea in a couple of days. Environmental conditions are forecast to be conducive for gradual development thereafter, and a tropical depression could form around the middle part of next week. This system is expected to move northwestward into the Gulf of Mexico during the latter portion of next week, and interest in northwestern Caribbean Sea and along the U.S. Gulf Coast should monitor its progress. 50% probability of development. It's basically a coin flip away from what this developing or not already, and this system isn't even expected to develop in the next 4 days or so. So that should tell you how confident the NHC is. They're not upping the chances exponentially because they need to get more information. They know it's going to develop, most likely, but they don't know how strong it's going to be, and they don't know the exact track, and that's why they're holding it off at 50 for right now. But I do expect these chances to continue to increase as time continues to go on, and I fully expect a yellow or orange X to form over here in the next day or so. So we're going to have to keep very close tabs, and we'll continue to update you on that. And I also want to show some satellite presentation, although it won't be exactly fantastic. I'll mainly be using that for more geographical sense, just to show you how this is going to be a little bit different from Helene in terms of its initial area of development, because the satellite, as you can see right here, it hasn't been updating for the last day and a half or so. We really need this to get its act together, and we need that satellite data so we can take a look at it. But we will ultimately be mainly using this for all intensive purposes, basically geographical reasons. So we won't be able to give us a good satellite analysis today, but I hopefully will be able to tomorrow or Monday. Hopefully Dr. Levi Cowan watches this and sees what the problem is. I'm not sure if the GO 16 satellite is out of commission right now or not, and hopefully that gets fixed, but we'll have to pay attention to that. Now, this is the other area of interest I'm paying attention to. And some models are showing that this system could be a huge ace maker out in the Atlantic Ocean, not necessarily affecting any land, but could be a very powerful and a very strong hurricane that we're going to want to watch. So we're going to have to keep close tabs on it down the road. This is in the eastern and central tropical Atlantic, an elongated area of low pressure located couple hundred miles west of the Cabo Verde Islands, continues to produce disorganized showers and thunderstorms. Environmental conditions appear conducive for gradual development of the system, and a tropical depression will likely form during the early day or middle part of next week, while the system moves towards the west and then northwest across the eastern and central tropical Atlantic. Formation chance in the next 48 hours is at 30%. In the next 7 days, it is 70%. So there's a pretty high chance that the system's going to develop, so we're going to have to pay very close attention to it. Most likely won't until probably Monday or Tuesday once again, so we will basically, taking a look at this, we will have potentially two strong tropical cyclones simultaneously to watch. This will be our main focus, obviously, over here in the Caribbean Sea and Gulf of Mexico due to the fact that this is going to be affecting more people, but we will still be watching this in case of the terms of evolution, development, see how hurricane hunters go into that and take a look at that and get all the data they need in terms of how they want to approach this. So ultimately, that's what we're paying attention to with our systems out here. Once again, I can't really use satellite to kind of give you an idea of where the system's going to go or anything like that, but I am going to use geography in the satellite just to kind of give you a general sense, at least, of where this Caribbean system is going to develop compared to where we were with Hurricane Helene. So here's the situation that we have, and I've been talking to Tristan about this a little bit. So this is what we got going on. Where Hurricane Helene formed, it formed in this area in the northwestern Caribbean Sea, took its time to organize, consolidate, underwent a rare Category 1 eyewall replacement cycle before exploding in intensity and making landfall in the Big Bend region of Florida, the worst landfalling hurricane in that area since 1896, which is almost 130 years ago. So yeah, this is a pretty much a once in a 100-year situation for a lot of areas in the Big Bend. But ultimately, the reason I'm making this point is where this system is expected to develop, it's expected to develop further to the south, deeper into the Caribbean Sea, in terms of farther away from the Yucatan, farther away from Cuba, farther from the Yucatan Strait, because Helene did not get its act together until it got towards the Yucatan Strait. I want to make that very clear because I do know I was talking to Tristan. He wasn't sure about the system getting as strong. I pray to God it doesn't get as strong because you guys do not need another system like Helene. But the reason he was saying that was mainly because of dry air expected to move into the Gulf of Mexico. But what I'm looking at is, at least compared to Helene, this system is going to be moving further to the south, and we're going to have to watch it right there, because if this system becomes an established cyclone, say, off the coast of Nicaragua instead of in the northwestern Caribbean Sea, then we got a big problem going on, because what we have going on, we still have all this ocean heat content over here. Yes, quite a lot of it did get tapped out in the Caribbean. Don't get me wrong, I can show you that. A lot of it did get tapped out over here, but there is still a crap ton left over here of ocean heat content, and another cyclone that moves and develops off the coast of Nicaragua could easily organize and rapidly develop considering the fact that the wind shear patterns, there's not going to be as strong as they are right now thanks to the outflow of Helene. So that's what we're paying attention to. So let's say the system moves and develops off the coast of Nicaragua instead of in the northwestern Caribbean Sea. Well, that gives it more time over those very warm waters, gives it more time over that insane ocean heat content that's still there. Yes, a lot of it has been tapped out as of recently, but we're still well over 150 OHC in a lot of these areas, and we still have up to 200 OHC in several of these areas over here that haven't exactly been tapped out at the most sense. And another thing I want to make perfectly clear, the loop current over here has not been really tapped out very much. Yes, it did get tapped out a little bit, but Helene basically did a similar situation to what Beryl did back in June and early July, where it moved too quickly to really take advantage of those deep waters. Still rapidly intensified, don't get me wrong. Still use those sea surface temperatures as fuel, don't get me wrong. But it didn't really tap into this huge bank of OHC that the Gulf of Mexico and especially the loop current have to offer. Want to make that perfectly clear. Yes, it tapped more or less some into the Caribbean Sea, not nearly enough to keep those waters cooled down or anything like that. Let's check the sea surface temperatures. Didn't even make much of a dent in them. Still 30 plus degrees Celsius waters, more than enough for another tropical system to organize and develop into them. So we're going to have to keep very close tabs. 1000%. Taking a look at the wind shear, yes, there is still some wind shear over here. Some of it is attributed to Helene's outflow, although it's becoming less and less, and there is a bit of a trough that's moving in as well, so we're going to have to pay attention to that. But take a look at this. This wind shear is expected to recede, and wind shear on the southern part of the Caribbean Sea is already receding pretty quickly, and we're going to see in the next few days the system, all the systems conditions really start to click up once again, and another gyre system start to organize and develop, potentially further to the south, as some ensemble runs have been anticipating. Let's go ahead and show you the shear and the moisture forecast right here very quickly. Let's go ahead and pull that up for you. We're going to use that courtesy of the European for the shear. Let's go ahead and use the 200 to 850 millibar wind shear, and we're going to go ahead and not just cover this area, but also the eastern Atlantic, because I also want to show you what the wind shear patterns are going to be like in that part of the Atlantic Ocean. So here's what we're looking at. In the next 30 hours, the wind shear is completely going to collapse in much of the Gulf of Mexico, parts of the Caribbean Sea. Yes, you're going to see a bit of a resurgence of wind shear over here by September 30th and October 1st, but that upper level low is expected to move out of the area just in time for tropical cyclone development to start off the coast of Nicaragua, and then the systems to really ramp up in intensity. In terms of this area in the eastern Atlantic, there is a little bit of wind shear to the north, and there is a little bit of wind shear to the south, but this system is in a pocket of wind shear where it can allow for it to organize and develop at a pretty quick rate. And then in the next 5 days, the wind shear starts to weaken quite a lot more, and then the system starts to potentially ramp up in intensity. I also want to pull up the dry air forecast just to kind of show you that. Here's what we have in terms of dry air. You're getting another moisture infusion in parts of the Caribbean Sea that will help the system organize and develop. And yes, there are some dry air slots in the Caribbean, not the Caribbean, also the Caribbean, but most likely in the Gulf of Mexico right there. But that's not, I do not think, going to do that much unless there's more wind shear than anticipated and allows for that for dry air to intrude. Then again, the system can always pull the eject button, undergo an eyeball replacement cycle like Helene did, and just pretty much kick it all out. And we'll have to pay very close attention to that right there. Regardless of that, though, we are seeing another moisture infusion, and we are still seeing the effects of the Madden-Julian oscillation in much of the Atlantic Ocean, and it's really going to show based on all the areas of interest that have been tagged, areas that are being organizing and developing. So, yeah, that's what we're taking a look at. Let's go ahead and also pull up some ensemble runs for you over here. We're going to go ahead and move this over to give you the more optimal viewpoint. Let's go ahead and pull up the GFS ensembles, starting with the 0Z and then the 12Z as well. Let's go ahead and go out to about 240 hours out just to give you some context to the situation. Let's go ahead and start. We're going to break this up into subsections. Let's start over here in the Western Atlantic. You're already seeing tropical scenarios really ramping up in intensity as it approaches the Gulf Coast, with scenarios going anywhere from Louisiana to southern Florida over here. Personally, I think anywhere from pretty much Mississippi east is the most likely scenario. So we'll have to pay attention to that. Then you have to take a look at this right here. Here's the 12Z run, still showing that kind of discombobulated track right there, but the intensity is a lot stronger and the system is ramping up a lot more. And of course, we are going to have to pay attention to that. Let's go ahead and zoom out. Did not mean to do that. Let's go ahead and go back to the tropics, because we could really do that. Let's go ahead and zoom in and then zoom out, and then let's hope and pray this works. I guess this really does not want to cooperate. Perfect. All right, we have the 12Z runs right here. Let's go ahead and show you that out here in the Eastern Atlantic over here. Rapid intensification is possible. Major hurricane strength is possible over here. We're going to have to pay attention to it. Here's the 0Z just to compare. Definitely a bit of an uptick compared to what we were seeing at the 0Z. 12Z's also shifted a bit more to the west as well. So that's going to be something to watch and something to pay attention to as well. Let's go ahead and lastly show you some operational model runs so we can finally neatly wrap this up in a little bow. Let's go ahead and show you the APHIS model, the European AI model, that is, and we'll go ahead and show you this real quickly. It wants this system over here in the Eastern Atlantic to really ramp up to near major hurricane strength, and then the system in the Caribbean to organize and potentially develop. It is showing a bit of a signal right there. Let's go ahead and show you the 6Z run right here, showing tropical storms a signal right there. So it's definitely a bit of an uptick. Same with this system out here in the Atlantic Ocean. Let's go ahead and show you the GFS as well. Here's the 12Z GFS. I will tell you this, I did take a look at this earlier this morning. I do not trust the track of this system right here, especially in the Caribbean. But as for this system out here in the Atlantic Ocean, wants the system to get down to a 946 millibar system as it moves out to sea and causes pretty much a lot of hectic stuff for shipping concerns, and mainly remains a fish storm. Still something to track, of course. But meanwhile, this system over here in the Gulf of Mexico just makes a hard turn to the right and then makes landfall in the Florida Panhandle after making landfall or a very close pass to it in the Yucatan Peninsula and then moving that way. I don't see that exactly happening, mainly because of the synoptic conditions right there. And I think it's going to stay further east before the frontal boundary pushes it towards Florida. So we'll have to pay close tabs to it. We'll show you the Canadian model as well. Canadian shows the similar situation, organizing and developing. These two systems really ramp up and intensify at a similar pace, and this system makes landfall as it gets to around a 984 millibar system. Going back to compare for the 0Z, that's a 9 millibar drop, so these models are definitely trending stronger. So this is all stuff we're going to have to pay attention to, and we will continue to keep you updated here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel as more data and more information continue to come out. Be sure to to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you are new. It helps us out, helps us make more videos like these. The goal of this channel, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather. If you want to come chat with us talking tropics about storms on Storms United, be sure to join our Discord server. The link will be in the end screen. Also, shout out to Daniel as an official sponsor of the Pat's Path Predictor channel. If you want to be an official sponsor, a friend of Pat, those are the 2 roles on my Patreon. Be sure to join it. The link is the first link in the description down below. So with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.